Welcome everyone to the Hidden Supply podcast. I'm Moshe Tanach, co-founder and CEO of New Reality, and with me is Ezra Gardner from Verana Capital, our biggest shareholder and a longtime board member.
Yeah, we've known each other now for how long has it been? 6 years
Yeah,
almost, right? When we started, you told me this story about what this bottleneck was going to come in AI. It was early. It was an early story, but it really reminded me somehow in my head. If you remember this conversation about the innovator's dilemma, how we shifted from these mainframes to these CPUs on desktops, and it reminded me of that. You need to get a whole lot of them first.
so today we're going to talk about why AI data centers are bleeding money. First of all, tell us about Verana Capital and what you guys are focused on.
Well, I'm the co-founder and CIO of Verona Capital. We started the firm 17 years ago, and we do a lot of different things. But one of the things that we do is deep tech, hardware investing. Semiconductors is one of our verticals. And you know, meeting you at the really beginning of, at least from my perspective, what the world saw as the AI revolution, extraordinarily interesting for me, and it's led me now to actually just recently returning from Texas and seeing huge gigawatt size data center, which is massive. I don't know if you've ever been to a data center that big, but it's like one of the most massive buildings ever. And and you look at it and you say, well, what's the bottleneck? We talked about energy there, and you probably see, and I can talk a little bit about that. But you probably see a different bottleneck in the utilization because there isn't endless energy, there aren't endless GPUs.
Yeah, so data centers are bleeding money. You see huge scale of investment like
Yeah,
we didn't see before so fast. Where do you think all this is going with the amount of data centers, GPU scarcity, energy scarcity? What should we expect for the next 2, 3 years?
yeah. I mean, one of the statistics that someone told me when I was there is that if you look at the GPUs that haven't been installed yet, okay, but they're in inventory, plus those that have been ordered but haven't been manufactured yet over the next 5 years, it's more than the amount of planned energy that the US is going to add to the grid. That's planned. That's not actually going to come to fruition. So from my perspective, they're never going to be able to do it. And then, so the question is then, how do you get more out of what exists, more out of that data center that's there? And I think part of the solution is embedded in what you do from a couple of different perspectives, both software and hardware. Are they both equally important?
Well, looking at it from a system company, that all the purpose of Neurality is to get more of what you do. The huge investment in GPUs or XPU alternatives keeps being pushed forward, but still utilization is at 50% worldwide. And I keep asking myself, why aren't we investing? And I think it's all an answer of follow the money. There's a big incentive for the huge companies, for the big investors to keep deploying money into this revolution. And although we're limited by the supply of energy and GPUs,
Yeah.
we keep building and investing in alternative XPUs that will make AI better. I think the window of time we're living is that GPUs can be improved, can be re-architected to be better. They should be because SMC, Intel, Samsung are limited by the amount of manufacturing they can drive or the amount of fabs they can build in the next 2 years. But there's still all the software and hardware that is currently deployed that can be improved dramatically, as we
Yeah.
constantly show. So I think it all a matter of how fast will the other companies, not the hyperscalers, use more AI and start caring about the bottom line, stop
Yeah.
caring about the economic viability of the business and not just buying as many GPUs as they can and then use them.
Right. Because what you're saying is that if you are only utilizing 50% of the GPU capacity and you want to add more capacity, you can just keep buying two GPUs and add one GPU's worth of capacity. You can just keep buying another two and add another one. and that will add capacity. But you can't do that if there's limited, space to put these data centers. There's limited energy allocation. You're saying you have to flip the equation and you have to stop ordering the next one, give you another half. You need to get the other half out of the one that's already installed.
Exactly. And there's an anomaly right now. We got used to SaaS companies with 90% gross margin, with zero marginal growth.
Yeah.
What do you think about all this? AI is kind of killing all these concepts.
Yeah.
Every additional user you add additional cost of sale that is the same as before.
It's totally. I mean, first of all, I think for the user, they don't understand that. Right? For the user, they look at some sort of an AI model as a piece of software. The front end, because that's the front end that they interact with. That's a piece of software. But it's what you said. It's not like Excel or Microsoft Word or something where they just put it they just put a copy onto your Dell computer or whatever, and there was no marginal cost. Every new user that utilizes that software is deploying energy and hardware behind them, and that is not scalable.
So what are we going to see? Because the rules of economics are not changing.
Yeah.
So what will happen in the future with AI that is so expensive and so demanding for every additional user you add? The SaaS concept. How are these two gonna come together, if at all?
I mean, it reminds me, if you go back like years ago, before there was like environmental protection laws or something like that, they did something called in mining called strict mining. They didn't try and worry about like what kind of chemicals were going to leach in the ground or anything. It's just like rip it out. Like that's what you're describing. You're describing like just brute force, just pour as much hardware and electricity as you can and everything. But the point of what the story I told earlier, statistic that I was given earlier when I was down in Texas, that's going to be impossible. There's not going to be enough space, enough electricity to do that. There's going to have to be a demand to stop the strip mining or what the analog to that is. And that's what I was trying to understand. If that's a software solution, you think that can be deployed immediately right now? Do we need to develop new hardware? Does it exist right now? I mean, what do you think?
I think it's definitely a software solution.
Okay.
But software solution that will have to be based on heterogeneous compute. And even NVIDIA acquiring Grok, and we'll talk about it maybe later today. It's all about heterogeneous compute because you can fit different stage of the computation to a better fit type of processor. Blackwell, Rubin from NVIDIA are very good on some things, more compute bound, although they have a very nice memory bandwidth from the HBM, but it's more compute bound, but there are better architecture like Grok, D-Matrix, and others that are SRAM based that can do even better on the decode phase. So I think we're going to see a mix between microservices, software based, running on different types of hardware, connected through a lightning speed network, very, very low latency, much lower than what we see today. By the way, part of those things, we're focusing on here. And the key will be to really improve the efficiency of the computation. And we're going to see we're $5 to $10 for a million token of frontier models.
Right.
It needs to be 1 to 5 cents.
Right.
And the way to get there is improve foundry fabrication, heterogeneous compute, very efficient software, aligning the network layer is not good enough. We're reusing network that was built for other purposes. We're just boosting it up. You need to refactor it from the ground up. So I think in the next 2 years, we see more heterogeneous compute. And we talked about new neoclouds that are built today that are purely heterogeneous compute, mixed between NVIDIA and AMD and Cerebras and other solutions out there.
Do they do that because that's what those are the chips that they can get? Or do they do that because they've actually thought about the problem that you're talking about, which is that not every AI core is the same. Not every AI core needs to go to a very expensive processor.
It's a good question. And you ask me, are we doing enough to improve the efficiency? No, we're not. Right. It's easier for, the CEO of Bank of America to decide to buy more compute than to go down and improve the efficiency of the compute he has. The same here. HBM is limited. So buying Grok or deploying Cerebras is fixing two things. A, you take a processor that is better in some parts of AI. We talked about the decode phase.
Right.
But B, it doesn't need HBM, so you can build more of it in C or Samsung or Intel. So I think both scarcity and how do we solve that, and better fit type of processor.
It's actually a good message to hear because, you're on more on the technology side. I'm more on the finance and investment side. If you look at what's happened, the two, you mentioned Grok, you mentioned Cerebras, right? Both of those are getting recognition across, between both of our expertise, right? I mean, obviously, the financial markets have rewarded them, have said that these things are worth a lot of money. Cerebras, PO price way above where they expected it to. Grok obviously saw the deal Christmas Eve or whenever it was when NVIDIA did the big licensing deal with them. And you're saying though that that's actually be driven by that the market has demanded those type of solutions, so it's moving in the direction that we talked about 6 years ago, in the very first time that we met.
Yeah.
Does it surprise you that what do you think was the trigger? Why did it happen? Why did it happen now? Is it's like all of a sudden like exploding?
I think the trigger is need for more interested parties in building data centers.
And that's the neocloud. That's why you brought up
that's the neocloud. That's the geographic investment in South Korea, in the Middle East, in Europe, more sovereignty, and the fact that supply is limited. I think NVIDIA saw an opening to have a technology that is not limited by HBM. Okay, let's build more, let's sell more. We're owning most of the market. Here's an opportunity to drive more. With Cerebras, I think the technology is very good. It's providing a very low latency access to very large models. They will work on improving the cost, but it's a fundamental thing that is needed in an agentic AI world. Agents are using LLM not just once. Sometimes they do 200 hits to the LLM before they answer your research request or whatever agent it is. So latency is key. Now, the time it takes to have one query, now you need 100 queries or 1,000 queries in serial.
Yeah.
No one wants to wait 20 minutes for an answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to talk about the neoclouds a little bit differently than hyperscalers, right? Because the hyperscalers, they will be limited by energy and by space and by all of this, but they're not limited right now by money. And they haven't focused so much, at least not for most of the time that we've known each other, on cost. They focused on land grab, right? Then you bring up the neoclouds, which we hear people talking about more and more now, that are, you're saying by definition, are heterogeneous. Say they have this AMD, they have they have all
Some of them.
Some of them. What they have to be driven by cost, right? Because they don't have the type of balance sheets and other businesses that are feeding them cash flow like an Amazon or a Microsoft or something like that. They have to care about the bottom line.
They have to.
So what are they doing?
They don't. Most of them, majority, aren't yet, because when you have such a great demand, and hyperscalers, how do they meet all their needs? They're building themselves, and they're taking contracts with the big neoclouds. So if you have a contract with Microsoft to build $5 billion worth of a data center, wouldn't you take it? Even with a very bad gross margin, you will, because the bank will fund it, and
as long as it's not negative cash, as long as it's bad gross margin is one thing, but is there a net margin? We don't know. We haven't seen it. These are the ones that are public, because we can only look at the financials.
So I think some of them started. Okay. Some of the big players did some acquisitions of software companies focusing on inference, trying to go to a higher gross margin, more vertically integrated solution for their customers, not just metal, just
right.
And I believe that we're going to see more of that. I think neoclouds will play a bigger role in providing inference as a service, SaaS-like consumption, and not just hardware as a service. We're here to support them with the Nexus software, all these inference OS that we've built. It's really simplify the access to those guys. The neoclouds are mostly data center builders and energy guys. And they're not software. They're not really deep into the AI. Some of them don't really know what their customers are doing with AI. We're here to help them make this leap and start selling software as a service for twice or three times the revenue that they get on Metal, although it's very easy to just chase a very big contract with Microsoft and fulfill their order. They need to think about the future, and some of them started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you, I think you should, talk a little bit about, I think what's interesting to me is what was the pull that you felt to take Nexus, and create it as a separate product? Because mm, it's an interesting story that the market was almost a magnet of the market, that you felt. And I think that's an interesting thing to talk about a little bit. Can you explain in a little more detail why that was just earlier this year that you announced that Nexus is a separate product.
Right. Well, one of our partners really wanted to take our software that was developed on the first inference appliance we sold and put it on different servers without our hardware.
Hmm.
You have to understand a lot of those names that we mentioned here about hardware providers. They're solving a very complex thing: how to build a better GPU to deal with models. They need to build a compiler, but there's a lot of software above it that connects to the cloud that allow an enterprise to manage all the fleet of GPUs and do multi-tenancy, multi-model. You want to buy 1,000 GPUs and run a GPT, a side DeepSeek, a side a different model for different use case. How do you do that? All these layers. It reminds me like the early days of Linux. It was a big community. Everybody contributed. Everybody downloaded and used it and needed to integrate Linux by themselves. But then got all the distribution companies, Red Hat and Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And now no one is thinking about building his own Linux.
Yeah.
We do because we're an embedded company, but most of them are just downloading.
Right.
That's what's needed in AI. So Nexus is the perfect inference OS. It allows you to just download it, get this we thought a lot about the CFO that wants to look on the system, what's in it for him, which department consuming how much, the IT manager and the developer, the data scientist that want to deploy something. And there's an interface to each one of these stakeholders. Instead of building all the software by themselves inside an enterprise, they can just purchase it and manage their fleet. And for NeoCloud, it really gives them the ability to take pre-allocated hardware that they have and start their inference business, not just Metal as a service business. And for them, it's really helpful because they're not deep into the AI layers and frameworks and all this integration. They will need 150 people to recruit and 2 years to develop. Why not just download it like you download Linux from Red Hat and put on your laptop?
Right. Right. I think that that's a great analogy. I also think that there's an education process probably that's needed as well.
Yeah, definitely. But I want to switch to energy. I know you've been involved in some energy companies, energy innovation. Where do you see the energy going? Nuclear, solar, space data centers, and what do you see there?
I mean, listen, it's a long separate story, but the short version of it is like this. The US is like barreling headfirst towards an energy crisis, right? Because there wasn't a lot of thought that happened after the nuclear accident at Fukushima when all the nuclear programs were canceled kind of around the world. And then came electric cars and started needing electrons to run mobility instead of petroleum. Okay. Then came data centers, which you need electrons to run and was never anticipated. And the DOE in the United States extended the useful life, in some cases twice on some of the nuclear reactors in the US. They've been around for forever, which is 25% of the base load, and they're going away. So you definitely have to replace them. Coal is going away. Natural gas is
How long does
replaced.
it take to replace something?
It's got to be replaced by 2035, or there's going to be rolling blackouts across California, Texas, Illinois, New York, Florida, and there's going to be rationing for 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 GPUs. There has to be. So, the question really, if you want to tie the two together, and say, okay, you've got a GPU that's using only 50% of its capacity. You got to use out 50%. That is a utilization. That is a resource utilization of we don't want to purchase more capex. We don't want to do this. Okay, but if you want to tie the two together, the energy to what you're talking about with Nexus and efficiency, it's about how you actually use less electricity, not just make sure to pump more electricity through that metal to use 100% of it. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I understood correctly, I think part of the solution in that is actually this heterogeneous compute that you talk about, because you can use lighter consumption hardware model, pairs to do certain types of queries. And if you could route those properly across this, say, such and such neo cloud, would that help energy efficiency?
Definitely, definitely. There's the law that takes the computation you're doing on a set of tasks, and you always need to focus on the piece that consume the most time.
Yeah.
Today, a lot of we're seeing the AI pipeline, I call it, being partitioned more and more
Yeah.
between getting the context of the request and building the KV cache, this memory representation of the state of the LLM, and then the decode that use that KV cache and to generate tokens or other media, and separating them, putting them on different type of hardware definitely increase the ROI of the energy.
And different type of models too, because if you go back a few years ago, all we heard about, all the news was, we have 1 billion parameters now. We have 100 billion parameters. And this was, you started to, think that you just go in one way. You should have as many parameters, as possible.
Yeah,
And then people started talking
there's
about
a lot of techniques like mixture of experts.
right,
So you have 10 trillion parameters,
right,
but they're split into 48 sub modules,
right, with lower parameters.
and only the experts that are needed for this query will be computed.
Right.
Now you separate the speculative decoding. What if I can speculate what will be the decoding? So here's another small model that is helping you speculate, and if you were wrong, you will fix that token. But if you were right, you saved a lot of computation.
That's really important what you just said, because you talked about how something like an AI OS like Nexus could help optimize in a heterogeneous compute scenario where you send it to the AMD or to the NVIDIA or whatever. But now you're talking about something else, which is just as important, if not more important, sending it to the right model. And as models are becoming more open source now, correct?
Yeah, and the industry is investing in that. Nexus includes all these smart routers, KV cache aware routing. So based on the context, you route the next step of computation to the right server. Um, those are the things that you need the software layer that Nexus gives, and you need the NIC, the networking, and the switch on the way to support you in moving the data between all those GPUs that are deployed in different racks in the most efficient way, in short time, and in very, very high bandwidth, because sometimes it's a huge amount of intermediate results, data that need to be tunneled between them. That's part of the demand we're seeing from the market. Get us a better AI super NIC, we call it, that connects those GPUs together and tunnel this data between them in a very hardened and efficient way.
So let's say there's someone who's listening to this, and either they already knew all of this or they're convinced by it, that we get a heterogeneous hardware environment that's developing. We also have a heterogeneous open sourced model, or AI model ecosystem that's developing. And you get it, and you say resources are limited, utilization has to go up. Okay, so you know we need this AI OS. What's the next step that someone would even do? How do you how do you even approach solving them out? Let's say, does it have to be before the data center is built? After the data center is built? When's the right time to say, to call Moshe and say, bring me my AI OS. I need to fix this problem. I get it. When's the right time?
All the examples you gave, if you already have a data center,
Yeah.
then you can do a lot in software to improve that. And I say software, but sometimes this software of ours, or if you invest building it yourself, can improve the utilization of the hardware that you already have. Not only the GPU, but the networking, whether it's Broadcom or Mellanox or whatever. If you are thinking about the build of next year, you definitely need to talk to us because you're better off building your network in a more efficient way based on our NIC technology than just take what's off the shelf from the OEM or directly from the AI vendor. I think he should think about it as it depends where he's coming from. If he's currently relying only on closed model, frontier model from AI or Gemini or Claude,
Yeah.
then he should ask himself, am I doing something that can be improved by using an open model with some of my data? We're seeing the open models closing the gap on the closed models in many, many aspects. If you can get there, it might be hard for you. It might take you a quarter or two to transition, but if you don't start today, you're burying yourself. We're seeing business models changing. Pricing is changing.
How hard is that transition? Think about it. Like if I thought about it from two different perspectives, one from like an operator or an owner of a neo cloud, another one, let's say from an enterprise is contracting to buy this, or maybe has some
It
on-prem.
depends on the use case.
Okay.
If it's a common use case, it's simpler because the open models are good at that. It's something more specialized, then you're using a frontier model for a specialized thing. You're probably using 1/100th of the intelligence of frontier model, but it also includes what you need. For that, take some data, hire an external company. We're working with a couple of them um, that will take you this journey, take your data.
These are consultants.
Consultants and software companies, software vendors, AI vendors that optimize existing models with your data to your use. And then you enable an economic engine that will improve your cost of sale. You don't need to build in-house because it's probably something that you get service once, twice a year with your data and start using either serverless API or or buy infrastructure as a service with our software and manage it yourself. It all depends how much you want to cut down the cost. If you want to build the right mechanism for 10, 15 years forward, because everybody's going to use AI.
Right.
It's not something that is going to go away. So set yourself for success. Buy infrastructure as a service, the cheapest form of compute, and use software that gives you access to open models in an efficient, out-of-the-box manner. I think that's the journey you need to take. If it takes you a quarter or a year, start it now. Put some resource on the side that will do it. Some small companies can't, but big enterprise that are placing big bets for the future must.
What do you think? What do you think the thing is? Since it's early days, obviously, since Nexus has been launched, what's the what's the most surprising thing that you've learned about the marketplace, about who's reaching out, about who's feeling the pain? What's the most surprising thing you've learned?
Well, the most surprising thing is actually not a good thing. It's majority of the market is still focusing on the top line and how to leverage AI and take it to production and get from a point of we're exploring AI, we're actually using it. So focusing on the bottom line is not there yet. And this is why a lot of companies, although economically it doesn't make sense, keep paying extra to frontier models and closed models because they're smart and they're still trying to figure out what to do and how to do with AI. But in the last 6 months, 9 months, I'm seeing the beginning of the change. Some companies starting to talk about doing experiment of open versus closed. We're seeing serverless API providers. The market is growing. I think it's around $5-6 billion now, just buying API to open models, which is a great sign. So I think 2026 and 7 will be the years of transition that people will start, and we're starting to read about it. Everybody's waiting for an economic crisis, or I think we'll soon see a lot of reasons, maturity of the usage of AI, and a necessity to fix the business model and the pricing that will push a lot of companies to move to use better pricing techniques like serverless API or own your own IaaS and buy software to manage your AI in-house.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I would say that what I see from the financial markets would support the thesis that you said about the transition happening now in 26 and 27, because you're hearing about and seeing a lot of these very large AI companies preparing for IPOs, which typically means two things. Number one, that they need more money because they're burning money. But number two, it is a predicate, or it predates what always happens next, which is the need to deliver profits. Once you go public, once your books are open, once you do this, you are inevitably forced in that direction. And that timeline kind of aligns with what you've seen. So I guess get ready for the phone to ring a lot
Yeah.
more.
So I wanna wrap it up. Maybe some final thoughts from you.
I mean, I'm fascinated about what you just described and how the market is changing. And I love the Red Hat Linux analogy. It's very apt and it makes sense too, because Microsoft couldn't own the whole world, let's say, right? No, Linux had to be there. So I'm fascinated by it. And I think next time we have a conversation, we'll see where this goes. But I'm thinking back to a conversation we had about this last year and how it's gone in that direction already.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining
Thanks
me.
for
Thanks for partnering. And until the next episode in the Hidden Supply, this is us, Moshe and Ezra. Thank you.